Welcome to the podcast. It's the magical holidays. Time for Joe watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. Why, you might ask? Because it sounds like a crazy task to be watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. It'll be struggle, no I won't lie. By the halfway point I will lose my mind, but with your support I'm gonna be fine. So let's have a blast on this Christmas time. Join me now and let's find out about today's Christmas movie. Was it good or bad? Happy or sad? Is there another dead mom and dad? Let's get to it with no delay. It's your old pal Joe and he's happy to say welcome to Joe watches 60 Christmas movies in 60 days.
How's it going, everybody? It's me, it's your old pal Joe, and welcome to episode 46 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. We're in the middle of another recording marathon here, but I got to get these done. I've watched, at this point, just to give some transparency to my dear listeners, that's you I'm talking about here. I've watched up through the early 50s in movies, and this is only episode 46 being recorded, so you can see that I have a lot of recording that I have to get out of the way. But I also have a lot more movies to watch, so it's just a whole bunch of bull. It's just a whole bunch of crap. But this is what I've done for myself. This is the gift that I've given for myself for Christmas. But you know what would be a better gift? If I had gotten myself something from our good friends at Third Eye Comics. Third Eye Comics, your headquarters for comics, graphic novels, games, gaming equipment, music, movies, and so much more. You know what else they have that's interesting other than the things that I've mentioned about 45 times so far? They have really fun candy. They have a lot of imported Japanese candy. They have other treats. They have a bunch of weird sodas. So, you know, maybe you want a snack of that variety. Well, guess what? Third Eye Comics has you covered as well. So whatever it is you're looking for, give shop.thirdeyecomics a try, and I bet you'll find something that'll tickle your consumerism bone. And buy it. And if you do buy something and you have an opportunity, let them know that you're supporting them because they supported me. Let's get on with the movie. Today's movie is Christmas in the Rockies. As I explained in the last episode, I chose this movie because I thought it was funny that I found two movies with references to Colorado in its titles. And that's the end of the story. That's why this movie is occurring when it's occurring. Christmas in the Rockies. It's fine. It's fine. We open with our main character laying in a snow-covered forest on top of a blanket, staring at the sky. This is Katie Jolly. Yes, her last name is Jolly. A dog comes over to greet her. She asks the dog if the dog will miss her. The dog does not answer. Turns out Katie is leaving because she got a new job in the big city in New York City. Her granddad is also there and is sad to see Katie go, but also proud of her for the new job. Then she then heads over to a lumber company that her dad runs and says goodbye to all the workers. This is Jolly Lumber. That's right, because their last name is Jolly. Everyone is sad and happy to see Katie leave. She stops by a guy named Jake, who she once had a relationship with, and so there's kind of an awkward coldness to their interaction here. They talk about an annual lumberjack competition that Jake is taking part in. Eventually, she says goodbye to her dad. She says, I'd love to have worked there as a lumberjack, but it seems that he would have never let her do that. I know, this is just my interpretation of the events. Yeah, I mean, that seems to be true. She really would have liked to have tried her hand at being a lumberjack, but her dad, who owns the company, was like, no daughter of mine's going to be a lumberjack, or something like that, you know. We find out her dad is also going to be in the lumberjack competition. We get the feeling that Katie's dad and granddad don't get along. This is correct. So much has happened in the first 7 minutes of the movie, I write. Then her new boss calls her and makes plans to see her the next day. Apparently she's flying in from Colorado and is expected in the office the next day. And while talking to her boss says, in fact, you know what, instead of coming in when you were planning to, can you get here a little bit earlier at 7:10 a.m.? That seems unfair. Katie is then driven to the airport by her granddad, and they talk about the distance between her dad and her granddad. The movie will cover it in time, but what happened here is that Katie's dad lost his wife. Of course, there has to be a lost spouse or parent in these movies. But that was the granddad's daughter. And so because of the death and some, rough feelings around the death, The granddad seems to be cool with the son-in-law, but the son-in-law is not cool with the father-in-law. Anyway, on their drive to the airport, they notice a lot of emergency vehicles heading in the other direction. This freaks Katie out, so they turn around and head back, and then they see EMTs working on her dad. It's his leg. Something has happened to his leg. Eventually, they get him loaded into an ambulance, and Katie rides with him. Cut to Katie helping her dad into his house, but now he's in a wheelchair. So the best I could determine, because they never explicitly say it, is that some tree or some giant piece of lumber fell on his leg, and he could have been a lot more seriously injured than he was. He's in a very sour mood getting home in his wheelchair, and Katie tries to convince him that he needs to let them help him. I think it's later that same day, but it is hard to tell. Anyway, cut to Katie talking to her new job. She asks for more time to get there, but they can't give it to her. She's already lost her new job. Cut to her trying to cheer up her dad, but he's being a curmudgeon, which is understandable. He hurt his leg. Anyway, he's mostly bummed because he won't be able to take part in the lumberjack competition. Apparently, a jolly man, in this case a male member of the Jolly Clan, has competed in the lumberjack competition every year for the last 50 years. Then Jake, the guy that Katie once dated, stops by. He's taking over the day-to-day operations of the company with Katie's dad out with this injury, and he's there to check on her dad. But also he's noticed something when running the numbers. Her dad doesn't want to talk about it in front of Katie. He already knows whatever Jake's alluding to. And then Jake says, well, you know what? You should still reconsider the offer to buy the company that was made. Katie's dad doesn't want to sell the company, though. Katie demands to know what's going on, and then Jake finally explains that without a serious cash infusion, the company might not make it into the new year. Jake has a whole bunch of ideas, like canceling a tree lighting ceremony that the company sponsors, or canceling the Christmas bonuses for all employees. Katie's dad's not going to let him do anything like that, though. Katie asks Jake to give her dad some time to heal. They can talk about it later, and Jake leaves. Cut to Katie hanging out with her buddy Amanda at a bar. They play darts. Katie complains about everything going wrong, which is understandable. There's a lot of stuff going wrong. She was supposed to leave town for a new job, but her dad got seriously injured, so she has to stay there and help her dad, which is a lot of pressure. But this also means she lost her new job, which is sad. She's also complaining about Jake being weird to her, and also Jake's desire to cut the fat so severely and trying to help the company. Back to Katie's dad, he gets a call from former professional wrestler Trish Stratus. Now, this is not who she's playing in this movie. She is playing a character named Marie Brown, who was once a very well-known and well-regarded lumberjack herself, and she's calling to check in on her old friend, Katie's dad, to see how he's doing. They will eventually probably be a couple. Back to Katie complaining at the bar. She really wishes her mom was still around, but then the paramedic who helped her dad walks in holding a brochure for the lumberjack competition. Katie gets an idea. She goes over and asks to borrow it. The guy is this is her eventual love interest, this paramedic. The paramedic is taken aback by her forward demeanor to look at the brochure. She flips through it and sees that the winner gets $50,000. She says her dad is about to get a whole lot better. She then goes back to her buddy Amanda and explains her plan, that she wants to win the lumberjack competition and then use the money to help support the company. Amanda points out that A, the competition is in 3 weeks just before Christmas, and B, Katie hasn't swung an axe in 15 years. Katie has faith she can pull it off. Amanda agrees to help her train. Amanda is apparently into physical fitness and or a personal trainer, so she is going to be helping Katie train for the lumberjack competition. Speaking of training, it starts early the next morning with her granddad. Her granddad is helping take her through the axe training skills, because this competition is not just cutting down a tree. It's actually a series of small mini events. And they are standing block chop. This is one where you would stand and then kind of cut across your waist area towards a tree or a log to cut that in two. Then there's the underhand chop, which is where you stand on a log and then swing downward to cut that log in two halves. Then there's axe throwing, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then there's the cross-cut saw, which is one, and we'll see it eventually. Well, you won't see it. I will. I did. It's kind of like a cartoon staple where you have two people holding each end of a long, thin saw, and they run the saw back and forth to cut through a log. That's what that one is. And lastly, there's the obstacle pole, which is Katie's weakest event. The obstacle pole basically means you run up a felled tree, a tree that's kind of laying on its side at an angle. You have to climb up to the far end of the tree and then cut the tip off of it. That is Katie's least favorite event. We see Katie training in these different events. She works really hard. Back to the lumber company, Katie walks into Jake's office and begs him not to cancel anything. She has a plan, but she can't tell him what it is yet. When she gets home, well, she's not telling anybody except her buddy and her granddad that she's involved in this competition. Back to the lumber company, Katie walks into Jake's. I told you that. When she gets home, she sees the paramedic is visiting Katie's dad. He agrees to help out her dad with his physical therapy. This is very weird and not something you usually see with paramedics where they just randomly visit their former patients, as far as I know. Anyway, his name is Harrison and he's new in town. Her dad suggests that Katie could show him around. He knows what he's doing by setting these two up. Anyway, Katie agrees. Cut to her showing Harrison around. She points at something and her shoulder hurts because of all the training, but she lies and said she hurt her shoulder playing darts. Then we find out the paramedic is from New York and came to town because he visited there when he was a kid with his dad, and his dad loved the town. She doesn't seem to think that makes sense. There might be more to the story. She will find out later. We then find out Katie has a PhD in agriculture and forestry. Harrison is very impressed. Talk eventually turns to the lumberjack competition. She lies and says she doesn't want her dad to know about it because he might feel bad since he can't compete. All in all, they hit it off. Early the next morning, her buddy Amanda helps her get to work doing traditional exercises. They talk about Harrison and wonder why he decided to move to town. He's not from there. Back at home, Harrison helps Katie's dad with his physical therapy. When Katie arrives from her morning exercises, she tries to hide how tired she is. We then see her watching a best of video of Marie Brown, the famous former lumberjack that's played by former wrestler Trish Stratus. She seems to be amazing at all of the events. We then get a scene where Katie helps Harrison untangle some Christmas lights and helps decorate her dad's home. They banter and have a good time. We find out that this will be Harrison's first Christmas without his dad. He mentions a hiking spot nearby that his dad always really liked, and Katie decides that they should go see it. They go on a hike. During the hike, they talk about how Harrison lost his dad. This leads to Katie talking about when she lost her mom. Eventually, they reach the place where they were hiking to. Harrison thinks it's very beautiful. I write in my notes, I'm very, very tired. Anyway, they have a nice time. The next morning, it's exercise time. We get a montage of Katie working with Amanda. This is mixed with more of Katie and Harrison going hiking. They also go dog sledding. There's also some axe training thrown in. After a few minutes, we're back to the movie. Katie is in her training facility, which is part of the lumber company. Anyway, we see Jake showing around people who might be buying the company. Katie is not happy to see this. Next up is a date with Katie and Harrison, like a full-on date, like a regular date where they both know it's a date, and I'm kind of surprised that these characters could be going on romantic dates, because that usually doesn't happen until they kiss for the first time at the end of the movie. We see her resting her head on Harrison's shoulder. He mentioned that he's been thinking about something. He'd like to open an outdoors camp for kids, and maybe Katie could help out. She thinks it sounds promising, but she has a lot of things to focus on right now, and he says, no, that's fine. I was just saying in a broader sense, that's a dream of mine. They start to kiss, but then Harrison gets a message. He has to work that night. Cut to Katie having dinner out with her dad. What her dad doesn't know is she's also invited her granddad to the dinner. The granddad is more amenable to this reunion than her dad is. He's very nasty about everything. Katie says she's reinstating weekly family dinners between the three of them. They stopped when her mom died, but she needs them to come back. She says they better get used to seeing more of each other. Everything is going as well as it can be, but then she sees Harrison outside. But he said he had to work. What's he doing outside? She explains her confusion to her dad and granddad, and they're sure that Harrison can explain if she mentions it to him. Cut to 3 days later. She hasn't talked to him since. Harrison is trying to call Katie, but she won't answer. Amanda is there because they're training and tells her, look, give him a chance to explain. But Katie will not. Why would he lie about having to work? Plus, she needs to focus on training for the competition. He was just a distraction. Then Katie falls and hits her head. Amanda sees an opening and calls Harrison to come help. He checks her out and says she should be fine. He starts to ask why she hasn't returned his calls. When Jake from the company arrives, he's worried about Katie and says that he can take it from there. Because somehow he found out she fell too. I do not know how he found out. Jake is acting like he and Katie are super close until Harrison leaves. Then he wants to know what the heck is Katie up to. She finally admits that she's training for the competition. He says, well, you can't train here anymore, and she needs to tell her dad about her being in the competition, or Jake will. Cut to her telling her dad. That was pretty straightforward. Her dad is pissed. He's worried that she's going to get hurt. There's a big blow up between her dad and granddad, who who has also been training her. But then Katie brings it all back down to earth. She promises her dad that she can win, plus she's a Jolly heir, and that means another Jolly has a chance to win the competition. He thinks and says, well, if you want to do this, there's someone you should talk to. Cut to her meeting Marie Brown, the former wrestler Trish Stratus. We find out that she dated Katie's dad back in high school. She agrees to help train Katie. We then jump ahead a bit to a Christmas dinner where Granddad has invited some surprise guests. First up is Marie Brown, who we invited for Katie's dad, and next up is Harrison. Katie is surprised to see him. Dinner goes great. Everyone enjoys it. After dinner, Granddad sets up the two pairs to do some stuff together, like Katie's dad and Marie Brown go get dessert, and Katie and Harrison go off to decorate a tree. There's lots of banter between the two couples. Then there's a bit with Katie and Harrison. She comes clean about why she was been avoiding him. He says, well, I was working that night, but what you saw was me visiting my personal trainer. Now, did he say that? Maybe. It was hard to understand what was happening in this scene. But let's just say he was visiting his personal trainer. Katie feels embarrassed. She thought he didn't want her to have dinner with her, which is stupid because he's constantly been around her up until that point. He says, well, if you think that, I need to fix that because it's the last thing I'd want you to think. They get close like they're going to kiss, but then they don't kiss, right? You get that. Oh, then the lumberjack competition is actually the next day. And suddenly it's time for the 50th annual Homewood Lumber Competition, brought to you by BPS Sports. Marie Brown is a part of the commentary team, although we will not hear her utter a single word. Katie is very nervous. Amanda and her granddad tell her she has this. Then her dad shows up and gives her the family axe to use. Every generation has used it. We find out Harrison is also in the competition. That's why he had the brochure in the very first time we saw him after at the bar. He says his dad loved these sort of competitions, so he's in it. So this, getting into one was one of his goals when he moved to town. He's surprised to see Katie is competing because he didn't know she hadn't told him. They decided to each do their best in the competition. No one should quit. The first competition is standing block chop. This is the one where you stand next to the block and you try to cut it into two. Jake comes in first, remember her ex-boyfriend, and Harrison comes in second. You remember her current boyfriend. Now it's underhand chop. This is one where you stand on top of the block and chop it between your legs. They don't announce who wins this one, but we know that Katie did well because the overhead announcer says, Katie does well. I don't know, something like that. Now it's time for axe throwing. Katie wins that round. And apparently that's it for day one. We find out Katie is in fourth place overall. Harrison and Katie chat, but then Katie's former boss calls. Turns out the replacement they picked didn't work out, and now they have time to let Katie take the job after all, if she still wants it. We don't hear her answer. Instead, we jump to Katie having dinner with Harrison. She tells him about the job offer, and he's 100% supportive. She takes this as him not wanting her to stay. He clarifies that this seems like something she's always wanted, and he says, you can't stay just for me. This, of course, makes Katie sad because, honestly, she's not very likable. Anyway, she walks off in tears. Cut to her packing in tears. Her dad finds her and tries to comfort her. He also tells her that he's agreed to merge with the other company that wanted to purchase them. It was a good offer, and it'll give everyone secure jobs, and he can finally retire. She says, are you sure that's what you want? And he says, yeah, I've been ready to retire for a little while. I'm ready to try to be happy again. And he says, yeah, because also Marie Brown has a camper van, and, well, she thinks I'd be a good navigator, which is his sly way of saying he and Marie Brown have gotten back together. The next day, Jake tells Harrison that he heard Katie left town. Apparently, Harrison is blown away. Katie didn't have the guts to tell him that she's actually leaving. Cut to Katie being driven to the airport by her granddad. Back to the competition. First event is the cross-cut saw. The event is a team event where each side takes one side of the handle. Before it begins, who should show up but Katie? That was not a very long trip to New York. She calls out to cheer on Harrison. He's so happy that Katie's there. Harrison and his partner do great. He immediately goes over to greet Katie. What about the job? Katie says she's over it. She wants to open that camp with Harrison after all. She wants to build something special with him. They start to kiss, but gosh darn it, they realize they're on camera. Next up is Jake and Katie. They're a team in the cross-cut competition. They do great as well. And after this event, here's how they're placed. Jake is in first place. Katie is in second place. And Harrison is in third. And it's time for the last event. It's the obstacle course. As I described before, you have to clamber up a leaning pole to get to the far end of the trunk and then cut the tip off of it. And this is difficult because you might lose your balance on the way. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, Katie wins. That's the end. It just happens. It's like ready, set, go. And we see 3 people competing. Maybe there's more, but only 3 are we focus on. And it's Jake, it's Katie, and Harrison. Harrison stumbles early, doesn't make it to the far end. Jake does, but he can't get the tip cut off. And then Katie does make it to the end, and then she wins. The end. She wins the whole competition also. She wins the whole thing. As I write in my notes, I cannot express how underwhelming this was. For spending so much time building up this lumberjack competition and for filming all of the events, it feels like such an underwhelming end just to have her all of a sudden be the winner. Anyway, next up is the tree lighting ceremony, which up until recently had been sponsored by Jolly Lumber, and now it's being sponsored by the merged new company. Katie's dad stands up and walks to the podium to speak. It inspires everyone, and everyone cheers. He gives a speech and thanks everyone at the company and the new merged company. He wishes everyone a jolly Christmas. Then they light the tree. Then Katie and Harrison kiss. Then we cut to Katie and Harrison on a hike. They arrive at a tree that Harrison has decorated. She thinks it's beautiful, but then she turns around and guess what? Harrison has proposed to her. She says yes. How long after the movie does this scene take place? We'll never know. Anyway, they say they love each other and kiss again and then wish each other a Merry Christmas. The end for Christmas in the Rockies. It was, say it with me, folks, it was fine. I thought this movie was doing pretty good until the stupid mix-up with Harrison, like, he doesn't want me around. It did not ring true to me. It just felt like them trying to build some drama into the movie. And then the underwhelming way that the lumberjack competition ended was also stupid. They spend so much time building that up, and it just goes, and she wins. And it's not like there's a whole ceremony or they give people medals or they present her with a check. She just jumps into Harrison's arms, and then it's time for the tree lighting ceremony. So, MVP, I'm going to go with the actress that played Katie. She was good. That was good. She did goodness. She did well. That's what I'll say. That's it for episode 46. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. I'll talk to you next time in episode 47. Until then, enjoy some jingly jangly bells. Goodbye.